The fork slipped from Braden Connie's hand the moment he looked up. Rain slammed against the diner windows. Old country music played softly from a broken speaker near the kitchen. Andrew Connie sat across from his father coloring on a paper napkin while waiting for pancakes. Everything felt normal for exactly 5 seconds. Then Braden saw her. A waitress stood frozen beside table 7 holding a tray with trembling hands. Ellie Connie. His missing wife. Pregnant. Alive. The tray crashed onto the floor. Coffee spilled everywhere. Every person inside the diner turned to stare. Andrew looked up slowly. His eyes widened. "Mommy?" Ellie looked seconds away from collapsing. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Braden could not breathe. Because 8 months earlier, Ellie disappeared without a word. No goodbye. No explanation. Nothing. Before we go deeper into this case, take a second and hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Because what Braden discovered that stormy night would completely destroy everything he thought he knew about his family. Braden Connie lived the same day over and over again. Wake up before sunrise. Make breakfast for Andrew. Search for missing shoes. Rush through traffic. Work until his back hurt. Come home exhausted. Then do it all again the next morning. He was 32 years old. But stress made him look older. Dark circles sat permanently beneath his eyes. His apartment felt cold all the time. The heater barely worked. Still, Braden tried to make life feel warm for Andrew. That mattered most. Andrew was 6 years old. Quiet. Sweet. Too smart for his age. Every night he asked questions Braden hated hearing. "When is Mommy coming home?" Braden never had a real answer. Some nights he lied. Some nights he stayed silent. Other nights he cried alone in the bathroom after Andrew fell asleep. Ellie disappeared 8 months earlier. One morning Braden woke up and realized her side of the bed was empty. Her clothes were gone. Her phone no longer worked. Police searched for weeks. Nothing. Friends slowly stopped asking questions. But Braden never stopped thinking about her. Her sweater still hung behind the bedroom door. Her favorite mug remained untouched in the kitchen cabinet. Sometimes Braden still reached for her in his sleep. Then reality crushed him all over again. He worked delivery shifts for a restaurant supply company. Long hours. Low pay. Constant pressure. Timothy Watson worked beside him most days. Timothy was loud, funny, and impossible to ignore. He constantly pushed Braden to stop isolating himself. "You gotta start living again," Timothy told him during lunch one afternoon. Braden forced a weak smile. But living felt impossible without answers. One evening Andrew sat on the apartment floor building a cardboard rocket ship. Suddenly he looked up at Braden. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy? If Mommy came home today, do you think she'd still love us?" The question broke Braden instantly. He looked away before Andrew could see the tears in his eyes. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts below. Any parent hearing a child ask something like that would never forget it. Braden hugged his son tightly. "She never stopped loving you," he whispered. But deep down, he was no longer sure that was true. Then came the stormy night that changed everything. Rain poured across town as Braden finished work late Thursday evening. Timothy glanced outside the loading dock and shook his head. "You driving home in that weather?" Braden sighed tiredly. "Andrew's hungry." Timothy tossed him his car keys. "Take the kids somewhere warm tonight." Money was tight. Very tight. But Andrew had spent the entire week coughing from the freezing apartment. So Braden agreed. 30 minutes later, they pulled into a tiny roadside diner outside town. The place looked forgotten. The sign flickered weakly through the rain. Inside smelled like coffee and fried food. Andrew smiled the second they sat down. "Can I get pancakes?" Braden laughed softly. "If they're cheap enough." For a brief moment, life felt normal again. Then Ellie walked out of the kitchen carrying menus. Braden froze. The world around him disappeared. Ellie looked pale and terrified. Her stomach was visibly pregnant beneath her waitress uniform. One glass slipped from the tray and shattered across the floor. Customers turned immediately. Andrew blinked in confusion. Then he whispered the word Braden never expected to hear again. "Mommy?" Ellie's lips trembled. Tears filled her eyes instantly. But instead of running toward them, she stepped backward. Fear covered her entire face. Braden stood up so quickly the booth scraped loudly across the floor. "Ellie?" His voice cracked. The entire diner went silent. Andrew jumped from the booth and tried running toward his mother. But Ellie backed away again. That hurt Braden more than anything. A gray-haired woman rushed from behind the counter. Gloria Boland, the diner manager. She stepped protectively beside Ellie. "Sir, please calm down." Braden stared at her in disbelief. "That's my wife." Andrew started crying. "Why did Mommy leave us?" Several customers looked away awkwardly. Braden felt humiliation burn through his chest. His private pain now sat exposed in front of strangers. Then he noticed something else. Bruises near Ellie's wrist. His stomach tightened immediately. "What happened to you?" Ellie opened her mouth. No words came out. Gloria gently touched her shoulder. "Ellie, sit down before you faint." Braden's head spun with questions. Why had she disappeared? Why was she working there? Why did she look terrified? And whose baby was she carrying? The thought poisoned him instantly. If you were sitting in that diner watching Andrew cry for his mother, what would you have felt in that moment? Share your thoughts below because this scene shattered Braden completely. Ellie finally whispered something through tears. "I never wanted to leave." Then her knees suddenly buckled beneath her, and she collapsed onto the floor. Chaos exploded through the diner. Customers stood up. Chairs scraped loudly. Andrew screamed for his mother. Braden rushed forward and caught Ellie before her head hit the ground. Her body felt frighteningly weak. Too cold. Too thin. "Call an ambulance," Gloria shouted. Ellie grabbed Braden's jacket tightly. "No hospital," she whispered desperately. "Please." Braden looked down at her swollen stomach. "What happened to you?" Ellie glanced nervously toward the diner entrance. Like she expected someone dangerous to walk inside. That scared Braden even more. Gloria helped move Ellie into a small office behind the kitchen. Andrew refused to leave her side. The little boy climbed into her lap and held onto her tightly while crying. Ellie kissed his hair over and over. "I miss you so much." "Then why did you leave?" Andrew asked softly. The room fell silent. Ellie lowered her head immediately. Braden paced across the office trying to control his emotions. 8 months. 8 months of pain and confusion. 8 months raising Andrew alone. Now she suddenly stood in front of him pregnant and terrified. Gloria quietly handed Braden coffee. "You deserve the truth," she said softly. Braden looked at Ellie. "Then tell me." Ellie wiped tears from her face. Months earlier, Dr. Charlotte Matson warned her about dangerous pregnancy complications. Stress could harm both her and the baby. But Ellie never told Braden. He was already overwhelmed with bills, work, and exhaustion. Then something worse happened. Ellie's older brother owed dangerous men thousands of dollars. When Braden refused to help him financially, threats started coming. Phone calls late at night. Men watching their apartment building. One evening someone smashed Braden's truck windshield. Ellie panicked. She believed her family was becoming a target because of her brother. Then 2 men cornered her outside a grocery store while Braden worked late. They threatened Andrew directly. That was the moment she broke. Ellie believed disappearing was the only way to protect her family. Braden stared at her in disbelief. "You thought abandoning us would save us?" Ellie burst into tears again. "I thought they'd hurt you. You destroyed us anyway." Andrew looked terrified hearing the argument. Gloria gently took him outside for pie and hot chocolate. The office became painfully quiet. Rain hammered the roof overhead. Ellie explained how she moved between cheap motels and shelters while hiding. Eventually, Gloria gave her a room upstairs and a job at the diner under a different last name. Braden's anger slowly mixed with heartbreak. Ellie looked exhausted. Broken. Like someone surviving instead of living. Still, part of him could not forgive her. Not yet. You should have trusted me, he whispered. Ellie nodded through tears. I know. Then Braden noticed medical papers sitting beside the desk. A sonogram picture rested on top. His hands shook as he picked it up. How far along are you? 34 weeks, Ellie answered quietly. The baby was his. Relief crashed into Braden so hard it almost hurt. All this time he secretly feared she had left him for another man. Ellie suddenly grabbed her stomach. Pain spread across her face instantly. Another contraction hit seconds later. Gloria rushed back into the office. Oh no. Ellie's breathing became uneven. Dr. Charlotte Matson warned her stress could trigger early labor. And after months of fear, exhaustion, and emotional collapse, it was happening. Braden looked terrified. What do we do? Gloria answered immediately. We get her to the hospital now. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Could you forgive someone who disappeared because they were trying to protect their family? Tell me honestly in the comments. Because Braden had only minutes to decide whether he still had room in his heart for Ellie. Then Ellie grabbed his hand tightly and whispered something that changed everything. I never stopped loving you. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Rain slammed against the windshield, while Ellie cried quietly in the back seat beside Andrew. Braden gripped the steering wheel tightly. His emotions felt impossible to control. Anger. Fear. Love. Confusion. Then Ellie finally told him the full truth. Her brother had stolen money from dangerous people. Not borrowed. Stolen. And after the threats against Andrew started, she believed leaving was the only way to keep her family alive. Why didn't you tell me? Braden asked painfully. Because I knew you'd fight them, Ellie whispered. And I was scared they'd kill you. The car went silent. For the first time, Braden truly understood the fear Ellie carried all those months. At the hospital, Dr. Charlotte Matson rushed Ellie into a room immediately. Hours passed slowly. Andrew eventually fell asleep against Braden's chest in the waiting room. Braden stared at the hospital doors, replaying every painful memory in his head. Then Dr. Matson finally approached him. She needs you, the doctor said gently. Braden entered the room carefully. Ellie looked exhausted and terrified. Tears rolled down her face when she saw him. I'm sorry, she whispered. Braden sat beside her quietly. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Ellie broke completely. I thought leaving would save you. Braden looked down at their hands. You should have let me protect you too. Ellie cried harder. Then Braden slowly reached for her hand. That small moment changed everything. Sometimes healing does not begin with forgiveness. Sometimes it begins with simply refusing to let go. If this moment between Braden and Ellie touched your heart, take a second to like this video and let us know where you're watching from. A nurse suddenly entered the room, smiling softly. It's time. Minutes later, a newborn baby cried loudly through the hospital room. Ellie sobbed instantly. Braden covered his mouth, trying not to cry himself. Then the nurse gently placed a tiny baby girl into Ellie's arms. Ellie looked at Braden through tears. Meet your daughter. Life did not become perfect overnight. Trust took time. Healing took even longer. But slowly, the broken pieces of their family started coming back together. Ellie stayed honest now. No more secrets. No more disappearing. Dr. Charlotte Matson helped her recover after the difficult birth. Gloria Boland visited, often carrying soup, blankets, and baby clothes. Andrew became the proudest big brother imaginable. Every morning he checked if the baby was awake. Every night he whispered stories beside her crib. Braden watched his son smile again for the first time in months. That alone felt like a miracle. Timothy Watson nearly tackled Braden with a hug after hearing the news. You scared everybody. He laughed. For the first time in nearly a year, Braden laughed too. Real laughter. Not fake smiles hiding pain. A few months later, the family moved into a small rental house outside town. Nothing fancy. But it had a backyard. Andrew planted flowers beside the porch with Ellie every weekend. One evening Braden found Ellie sitting outside holding their daughter. "You okay?" he asked softly. Ellie nodded slowly. Then tears filled her eyes again. "I still hate what I put you through." Braden sat beside her quietly. "You hurt us," he admitted honestly. Ellie looked down immediately. "But fear makes people do desperate things." She started crying softly. Braden gently touched her shoulder. "And we survived it." Ellie leaned against him silently while their daughter slept peacefully in her arms. Before we continue to the final part of this story, tell me your thoughts below. Do you believe families can truly heal after deep pain like this? Because many people watching understand this kind of heartbreak personally. Months later, Braden returned to the same diner during another rainstorm. Only this time, Ellie stood beside him smiling while Andrew happily ate pancakes nearby. The same place that once held heartbreak now held healing. And Braden finally realized something powerful. Sometimes fear tears families apart. But love can still guide them home again. Some moments change a person forever. For Braden Connie, that moment started inside a small roadside diner during a storm. He walked in carrying heartbreak, exhaustion, and unanswered questions. Then he came face to face with the wife he thought abandoned him forever. And the truth behind Ellie's disappearance changed everything. Not every painful decision comes from hate. Sometimes fear pushes people into impossible choices. Ellie believed leaving was the only way to protect the people she loved most. Braden believed he had been forgotten. Meanwhile, both of them suffered alone, while still loving each other deeply. That is what makes this story so emotional. Healing did not begin because life suddenly became easy. Healing began when the truth finally came into the light. One honest conversation opened the door for forgiveness. One terrifying night became the beginning of a second chance. There are people watching right now who understand this pain completely. Single parents carrying heavy burdens alone. People trying to stay strong while quietly falling apart inside. Parents wondering if their families will ever feel whole again. This story is for them too. Because broken does not always mean finished. Sometimes people survive things they never thought they could survive. And sometimes love returns when hope feels completely gone. Before we end this story, I would love to hear from you. What part of Braden and Ellie's journey hit you the hardest emotionally? Was it Andrew asking when his mother would come home? Was it Braden seeing Ellie again inside that diner? Or was it the moment their baby girl entered the world? Share your thoughts below because your voice matters here. And if you are a single parent doing everything possible just to keep going each day, leave a comment too. You are not alone. If this story touched your heart, take a second to like this video. And if you enjoy emotional stories about resilience, family, heartbreak, and second chances, subscribe to The Redeemed Single Dad for more powerful stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. And until next time, keep believing that even after the darkest storms, healing is still possible.